All right, I heard you, okay? I heard you. You want more information on home labbing, self-hosting for yourself, and an easy entry point to get started. While you could use a Raspberry Pi or an old computer, and that is certainly the way to go, and I'll probably be covering that in time. I also wanted to show off this thing, because this is like the size of my Mac Studio, and yet it could be your entire home lab if you're just getting started. I'm Addy or EposVox, here to help you take ownership and control over your tech and online experiences. And this is the Beelink ME Pro. This is a hybrid NAS slash mini PC slash whatever you want it to be. It is super tiny. So this is a roughly $300-ish mini PC slash NAS here. Like I said, is like 2 cans of soda worth of size. Super tiny, super slick. It's one of the more beautiful mini PC designs that I have seen. It is equipped to function both as a mini PC and a NAS. By default, it comes with Windows on there, which I was pretty disappointed, but that makes it a prime candidate for Linux or for TrueNAS. This one comes with 12 gigabytes of RAM and an Intel N95 processor, which is a quad core with all high performance cores. And it's actually a surprising little beast here. So let's go over the ports real quick. You have both 2.5 and 5 gig Ethernet. You've got HDMI, 2 USB Type A's, and a USB Type C. It comes with HDMI, power, Ethernet, and some hard drive accessories in the box. And this could just be a mini PC, but they went ahead and added in these lovely little drawers that you can store 2 hard drives on. So for storage options, you have to unscrew them. They are not built for hot swapping, so I'll explain as I'm unscrewing them here. For storage options, you have 2 3.5-inch hard drive bays that you can load up to, I don't even remember, like 30-something terabytes each on them, I believe. And then you have 3 M.2 ports on the bottom, which is pretty bananas. And so it comes with some sort of storage out of the box. Mine came with a 512 gig NVMe SSD. Yours may come with whatever you part it out as when you order it. And so that gives you options both for bulk storage, like I said, multi-terabyte hard drives for photos, for videos, for ISOs, whatever, as well as fast storage for building a super fast cache array or running operating systems on if you do use it as a mini PC. So I have loaded up my Beelink ME Pro here with 2 8-terabyte Seagate Barracudas because that's just what I had spare of. That's not a whole lot of storage. But if you're just getting started and you just have a photo library, you're not into multimedia production like I am, 8 terabytes is a good amount of space. And it's a lot cheaper to get these and to host it yourself than to pay for that much cloud storage that you can't always even trust. And so the drives go on these little drawer sleds here, which slide into place. And then you can quickly and easily change them as you need to. And like I said, on the bottom, you also get access to NVMe slots. Also, I love that they store the Allen wrench, should you need it, in the rubber grommet on the bottom. That makes it more likely that you're actually going to keep track of that, because anytime something comes with a little Allen wrench, I'm always immediately getting rid of it and losing it. We got a little panel underneath here that you can store up to 3 drives in. Now, by default, it's only built to support 2280 M.2 drives. You could do smaller if you had another way of securing it yourself. They only have the screw spots for 2280 here. But it came with one. I loaded it up with a 2-terabyte drive so I could play around with different operating systems on here. And I was quite impressed with the performance. Like I said, I have 2 8-terabyte drives in here. So I went ahead. I was going to show off Unraid here because I feel like Unraid is a really fun starting point for self-hosting. Like, it makes setting up Docker apps and things like that significantly easier and is a lot more fun. However, Unraid was just rejecting all of the flash drives I tried loading in here. And Unraid isn't really the ideal solution when you only have 2 hard drives anyway. So I went ahead and downloaded TrueNAS. You go to their website, get the ISO, burn it with something like Balena Etcher and to a USB flash drive, and then went ahead and booted it up and had no issues installing right on here and just set up a mirrored array with the 2 8-terabyte drives, which gives me 8 terabytes of usable space out of the 16. But I have a failover. If one of the drives dies, I have a full backup copy. Well, not backup, but a full parity mirrored copy of the data. So I'm protected in case one of the drives kicks the bucket. I am safe. So you set up your mirrored stripe of your 2 drives, and then you create a pool and a data set on that storage array. So I just called mine Beelink and set up a couple shared folders with a user to access them over Samba, which was then immediately available over the network to a computer. Did some copies. I was getting at least gigabit speeds. I was only really connecting this to a gigabit port, but you only have basically one hard drive's worth of write speed. So if you're doing, standard hard drive. So at most, even if you're using the faster networking, unless you're using the SSDs in some sort of cache array, you're only gonna get like 120-ish megabytes per second write speed anyway, but plenty fast, especially for photos. Made my storage array, and then I went and downloaded some of the apps. TrueNAS supports, you could sort of set up Docker stuff, and they have their own apps ecosystem, as well as virtual machines you could run here to run various different self-hosted services. So for this test purpose, I set up Jellyfin, which is media streaming. It's an open source alternative to Plex that doesn't require the internet like Plex used to not, and you have a lot more control over. Went ahead and downloaded that. You do have to manipulate permissions on your file shares a little bit so that it can access the library that you have access to copy your media over to, and that went off without a hitch. I had no issues there. Copied over a couple shows and movies, and I was very, very impressed with the playback capabilities of this little box. Standard HD stuff, it had no problem with both direct playing when you have a supported browser or media player, or transcoding. It handled it like a champ. And even 4K HDR stuff, it really didn't have much of a problem. Every once in a while, if I was like skipping around, it would have to take a second to spin up the transcode, but it was still transcoding faster than real time, which is very impressive. But the onboard iGPU in this Intel N95 is kind of a media powerhouse. It doesn't have AV1 support, but it does have H.264 and HEVC encoding, and it does a pretty good enough job. I had no issues streaming any media from this thing. So it'd be a nice little Jellyfin server if it's just for something in your house and only a couple users. You'd want a little bit more power and a dedicated GPU if you're doing a whole bunch of users and out-of-house streaming and all that jazz. Image is a self-hosted photo library service that you could use like to back up photos from your phone without needing to pay for iCloud or Google Photos, manage your actual photo library, make it visible both in a mobile app as well as in your web browser and things like that. And this one requires a little bit more massaging to get set up. Image itself actually has a guide for using the TrueNAS app and getting it set up. You have to set up a few specific data sets, folders basically, with specific permissions for Image to utilize, which is your Postgres SQL data and your main data. But once that is set up, just follow the guide. I know you all are asking a lot in the comments for specific tutorials for this kind of stuff, and this is the kind of thing that changes enough and is technical and specific enough to your exact situation that it just makes sense to point you to the written guides, especially provided by Image themselves. I tried just winging it and setting it up, since with a lot of Unraid stuff, you don't have to manage a lot of the weird Docker quirks. So I assumed with the TrueNAS app that would be the case. It took me like 4 tries because I just kept trying to wing it, trusting the defaults, whatever, mostly knowing what I'm doing, and that didn't work. But when I followed the written guide to the letter, worked perfectly out of box. I did turn off. Image itself has a lot of like machine learning features, offline machine learning features for like face recognition and person identification and things like that. And that requires a lot more cores and power than this box has. But for the standard just photo library ingest, thumbnail generation and stuff like that, assigned it all 4 cores, 8 gigabytes of RAM. I did the same thing with Jellyfin, and I was off to the races, able to upload pictures, had no issues. Perfect little photo box. In fact, if I want to skip out on those extra features, I might make this my dedicated Image photo library box, where I just have a dedicated box for my own personal photo library, because it was that much better of an experience than running Image on my Synology NAS, which was significantly slower at thumbnail generation, among other weird quirks and issues. So I'm super stoked with this, and this might actually become my dedicated photo library. I haven't decided yet, because I could run a VM on my Storinator and have those extra cores for all the extra features. So I'm not sure yet. I also wanted to play around with this as a mini PC, since that's what it's also set up for. You have video out, you have USB, you have audio, all that jazz. So I went ahead and installed CachyOS on it. That is a Linux distribution optimized for gaming, ships with drivers and gaming packages already ready to go. It's what I use on basically every computer these days. And it worked fine right out of the box. I tried using the handheld mode. I was imagining this weird situation where like it was a TV PC for you, where you booted into your Linux distro when you wanted to use it directly. Obviously, don't touch the hard drives in your operating system or you'd mess up your TrueNAS array, but then reboot it and have it default to TrueNAS when you're not using it to stream stuff. That would be a weird use case, but whatever. So I installed the handheld edition of CachyOS there, which has the GameScope SteamOS kind of user interface. That user interface was pretty laggy in 4K on here. In 1080p, it was at least serviceable. However, you're not getting a lot of gaming power out of the iGPU on this thing. I was able to run like Arcadium Space Odyssey, super small indie games, even at 4K, was fine. Even dropping games down to 720p low for more intense games like Skate Story or Darksiders Genesis was older. I thought I could try. Not playable, not a good time. It can do super old games, super small indie games, open source games like Xenotic, or since it has that video engine on the iGPU, you could do Steam in-home streaming and stream through Steam and play, render it on a beefier computer and stream to your bedroom or something with this. Would be a perfect experience. You could also use this as a nice little capture rig. It struggles with the scene rendering to do any sort of 4K capturing, whether it's in OBS or GUVC view. Either one, 4K was asking too much. But 1440p and lower, perfect little capture machine here. And high quality HEVC had no issues, which is awesome. Obviously, you're limited on USB ports, but use the USB-C port for your capture card. Nice little capture rig. So this is a pretty neat little rig for... This is a pretty neat little rig for $300. If you get the N150 version, which is supposed to be a slightly higher end CPU, it bumps up to almost $600. And at that point, you're looking at a 4+ bay Synology for that price. So it's kind of hard to recommend that more expensive one. But from what I've seen from talking to my Discord server, that CPU is actually less worth it in general compared to the N95 because it's mostly focused on efficiency cores. So this one to me is the media powerhouse. If you want to get started cheaply and you don't want to like build your own home PC for some reason for it, running this with TrueNAS or something, or you could run a desktop operating system, Linux or otherwise, and just share out an array of these two drives over your network and treat it as both a desktop and a NAS. You could do that. But either way, like to me, this is a great little starting point. It's super slim, it's minimal, it's quite attractive, and it's small enough and quiet enough that you could tuck it just about anywhere, that you could just wire it up to network access and be good to go. So I'm going to be covering other options on the channel and more in-depth guides. I have a whole massive video coming on my nightmare of an experience fixing my photo library so I can actually use Image, because Image is great out of the box if you are someone who mostly just has a smartphone, hasn't shot photos for a very long time or whatever, but as an older person who has 30 years of photos across a variety of cameras, most of which back in the day did not have dates set correctly, moved across various file systems and computers, a lot of the dates and times and stuff get really messed up. So I've put in a ton of work to fixing my photo library before this, and I think that will be a very informative video. I have that coming soon. Get started. Download a virtual machine. Grab an old computer. Get one of these. Start messing with Linux and start messing with self-hosting so that you can control your technology experience, because these companies, Microsoft, Meta, they are not even remotely looking out for your best interests, and it's time you take a little bit of control back. Baby steps. I'm not expecting you to replace every big tech service and product you have with something like this. It's all about the baby steps and supplementing out what little tools you can along the way to just start getting some of that back. You still need an offsite backup. Cloud is probably good for that, but cloud should not be your primary storage. That is all. Remember to be kind, rewind. Go check out my big talk with Wendell if you want to hear more about getting started self-hosting and controlling your tech experience. And the first episode of Home Directory, which is the podcasty thing I've been doing, which Wendell's episode was a part of, with my community manager, Will, to see a more normal person's experience starting to switch over to Linux. I already said, remember to be kind, rewind. See you. I'm back, baby. Linux.